If there's one thing people get wrong about gravel bikes, it's this. Tyres. A gravel bike is a lot more capable than a lot of people think, but it all comes down to, what tyres you've got fitted. Too slick a tyre, and you'll be low on confidence and low on grip. And too aggressive a tyre, and you're putting all that effort and going nowhere. So, does this sound like something familiar to you? Because today we're going to dive into all these different gravel tyre types and a handy system for finding the right one for your perfect gravel ride. So before we get into that system, why might you want to run different tyres in different scenarios? I mean, isn't gravel just gravel? I mean, whack on a skinny XC tyre and off you go. Well, no, not really. I mean, the spectrum of gravel is so vast, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to setup. See the race versus adventure explainer I did recently? Terrain and surface varies, and so does everyone's need when it comes to what and where they ride. When it comes to choosing that perfect tyre, there are a few things to consider, so let's go through them. Tread patterns vary hugely, from road-inspired slick designs through to ones more reminiscent of cross-country mountain bike tyres. A tread pattern will change across the profile of the tyre, so a trend we're seeing is to have a shallower sort of file tread across the middle to reduce rolling resistance and then building up to a lugged shoulder, which just helps bite when you go into a corner. If you're going for all-out speed, the shallowest tyre you can get away with will often be the fastest. However, this does come with the caveat that you might find yourself coming a little bit unstuck when the terrain gets a bit rowdy or loose. And on the flip side, an aggressive tread may give you more grip and control, but will roll slower. Now, but rolling slower, it means you'll be putting more effort into the pedals, which over a long day or a race will be more fatiguing. So whether you're on an all-day epic or racing, that extra fatigue can be costly. Across, dare I say, all disciplines now, we're seeing the old school view of skinny is fast being disproven. Yes, I'm sure there are some very specific use cases for where a skinny, lighter tyre is actually better, but I'm scratching my head to find them. What we are seeing, though, is a trend to go wider. That wider tyre at a lower pressure not only provides more grip and comfort, but is actually faster. So instead of bouncing off of that ground-bound object, it actually deforms around it. So this is just all about reducing impedance losses. And where possible, we're seeing racers squeeze the biggest tyres they can into their frames. So in some cases, we're seeing frame manufacturers putting clearance in for tyres up to 2.2 inches or 55mm. However, there are still some brands out there that justifiably are sticking to a smaller clearance. Now, this is to preserve that agile sort of racy feel they're bringing over from their race bikes. So in this case, we're seeing clearances of about 45mm. So some of these clearances might sound a little bit conservative, and yet you might be able to fit that big tyre in your frame and it spins round. But there's no point in being smug about it if, it's going to get written off by a little pebble that gets stuck in your tread or just a build-up of mud. So previously, a lot of gravel tyres were either sort of scaled-up cyclocross tyres or scaled-down mountain bike tyres. In the case of cross, these tyres are a really good aggressive tread for biting into mud and soft terrain, but because they were run on short, soft, closed courses, where in the case of a flat, your rider could just run back to the pit and pick up the spare bike, they were lacking in sort of casing strength. Whereas the demand with a gravel tyre is it needs to be a lot more resilient, so riders are going to find themselves in these remote locations on tougher terrains. Now, this is where we're seeing brands sort of reference and take inspiration from touring tyres and XC race tyres. So we've now got reinforced nylon sidewalls, not only for protection, but stability at a low pressure. We've got bead shields, additional anti-puncture belt in the centre of the tyre profile, endurance casings. These tyres have got to do a lot more than ride around a muddy field for an hour. And in the case of these Vittorias, graphene-infused treads for durability, grip, and longevity. Burly. Right, so now we're going to dive into that new system I've mentioned and explain about the new tyres. Let's go. So, you might be asking, Adam, what is this new system you've alluded to? Well, I'm going to start by asking you a question. Have you ever walked into a bike shop and been met by a massive wall of tyres? Yeah, everything looks really cool, it's got a really fancy name, but you've got no clue what does what and what tyre you need. Well, the Terrain Score is a system devised by Vittoria that takes out that guesswork. So it's derived and inspired from academics in the world of pedology and geology. So essentially, the study of soils and dirt. Yeah, lab coat stuff. In short, when soils and rocks are studied, they're graded by their grain size. So at one end, you've got clay moving all the way up to boulder. So in the T-Scores case, At one end, you've got hard packed gravel, and then at the other end, you've got mud. Its grading system works on a numeric percentage-based scale, so the higher the number, the rowdier the use case. We're lucky enough to be supported by Vittoria here at GMBN, so we've got their entire range of gravel tyres to play with. Now, yes, other brands do have naming systems, but for today, we're sticking with Vittoria's idea behind it. We've now got 7 tyres in the range, 5 sort of re-engineered and derived from previous designs, and we've got 2 all-new flavours. So we'll start at the lowest end of the scale with the T10. So this is the hard pack tyre, designed for the primest cork just popped champagne gravel. It's got a super slick centre band with shoulders to bite when you find some corners. Next up, we have the T30, so it's the fine loose tyre. So we're starting to see a little bit more of a tread around the centre band, so it's a fish scale design. What does that mean? So it means in the right direction, you've got really good braking traction, but at the same time, it's got really low rolling resistance. And then what this does, it ramps up to some siped shoulder lugs to, again, bite in when you lean the bike over. Next up, the T50 mixed tyre. So it's the first of the 2 new tyres in the range. So being in the middle of the range, it's designed to sort of balance, so it gives you traction without compromising speed. So if you want a fit and forget tyre, this might be the one for you. It makes use of a shallow sipe tread pattern that runs into the centre profile of the tyre. You don't see that too much on gravel tyres, but what it does mean is it's quick, but then gives you that control when things do start to get a little bit rowdy. So next, and the second of the 2 new tyres, is the T60. So again, a mixed tyre, but unlike the T50, this sort of airs more towards the aggressive style of gravel riding. So you've got a deeper tread all the way across the profile, great for consistent handling, no matter where you're riding. The next up, we have the T70. So you might recognise this from a flat bar bike, and you wouldn't be wrong. So it is derived from the Mezcal XC tyre. I mean, it's race proven. What's not to love about that? So what you get with that is a really fast centre band down, the centre of the tyre, and then that rolls out to a nice deep siped tread that gives you loads of traction, loads of control in varied conditions. So getting to the higher end of the scale now, we're on to the T80. So this is designed for the roughest, loosest conditions, and what you get with that is a centre band that sheds muck and trail debris, but then you've got some shoulders that bite really hard when cornering. And at the top of the scale, we've got the T90. Now, this features high traction lugs and a self-cleaning tread pattern, which, as the name suggests, is designed to shed mud, dirt, and anything you might find stuck to your tyre as conditions worsen. So since this is derived from a cyclocross tyre, it sort of thrives in sort of really slippy, wet, technical conditions. So that is the full range of gravel tyres from Vittoria. So I know the sun's out outside, so I'm going to go back outside and ride my bike. Right, we're back outside to answer the next question. Can you mix and match tyres on your gravel bike? Well, of course you can. So today, using the T-score as a reference, I'm running a T30 in the rear and a T50 in the front. So whilst these tyres do differ in sort of design, they don't stray too far from each other's intended purpose, so it's a nice match. So for the way I ride, what I found is having a mixed tyre, so the T50 on the front, provides me with a consistent grip for turning and overall handling, whereas a faster rolling semi-slicked tyre rolls really quickly on the rear of the bike, but bites in hard when you're railing a corner. It's worth considering, but if you look at the profile of these tyres, they're very similar in overall shape. This just means it gives you a sort of consistent feel, front to rear, whether you're completely upright or leaning the bike over. If you were to say mix a T80 and a T10, what you'd find is because their design and sort of intended purposes are so far apart, you'd end up with a bike that just feels sort of really inconsistent front to rear and potentially really unpredictable to ride. But for the most part, you'll see bikes come either out the box or be run with the same tyre front and rear. Now, there are definite benefits to this. So you'll have 100% continuity front to rear in terms of traction and bite. Then you'll also have the ability to swap tyres front and rear to even wear out. And then this is really handy. Say you're bike packing and one of your tyres blows up catastrophically and you need to nurse it back. You can always swap it to the front of the bike and then have the inflated tyre on the rear just with all your luggage, panniers, etc. So as always, setup is completely personal and there is no definitive right or wrong answer, but what the T-score gives us is a framework for identifying each tyre's purpose and sort of intended use. So, do you like a fast, loose bike? Do you slap on a semi-slick and maybe sacrifice a little bit of handling when things get rowdy? Or do you prefer the comfort and consistency of that treaded tyre, maybe at a little sacrifice of efficiency? Well, let me know down in the comments below and I'll see you soon.